Hey there, bonsai lovers. The best part about spring arriving? Finishing repotting season. I'm exhausted. I'm done. I'm glad it's all over. It was a very busy time, but I've finally been able to pack up the tools, give them a good clean, sharpen them, give them an oil, put them back into the tool roll and wrap them up and store them away for next time. For now, I'm just glad that it's over, but now that spring's here, it's time to change the thoughts, I suppose, from that sort of work to now looking at how we can manage the spring growth, how we can harness the resource and use it to best advantage for the development and advancement of our bonsai. So this podcast, I'm going to talk about, as I mentioned last time, I'm going to talk about Prunus. So flowering fruit trees, for instance, that's probably the best way to think about them. How I manage them and how I prune them, because the way I work with all my bonsai is to look at the one thing that I love the most about them, and how can I accentuate that? How can I maximize that return? Whether it's the autumn coloured foliage on deciduous trees, or it's that beautiful winter cleanup that I give to the pines and junipers, that sort of thing, or deadwood, whatever it is, whatever the money shot is, that makes me smile the most. How do I maximize that? And Prunus, I have a real strategy on how I manage their growth and how I prune them and when I prune them to maximize the flowering, because that's the best time for me right now. Like, walk around the street, look in your yard. If you've got any kind of flowering trees, fruit trees, it's just beautiful. It's just lovely. So I want to maximize that. So I'm going to talk about that today. And also, now we're ticking that corner into growth time. It's time to start thinking and time to start actively getting involved with fertilizing your trees. So that'll be the second part of the podcast for today. So should be interesting. Hopefully you've got some Prunus in your collection. If you don't, please get some, because they're rippers. At this time of the year, you can't get much better variety to have in your collection, to be honest. Righto, so Prunus. I've got all different varieties, flowering plums, cherries, whatever they are. They're great for air layers too. Like, if you've got one around your neighbourhood in your yard, of course, that you can get access to, they air layer really well, and cuttings too. I've propagated lots of them from cuttings. I've got one parent tree that actually got air laid to make it nicer tree years and years ago, to reduce the length of the trunk and give it a nicer, more lateral nabari spread on it, which looks terrific now. But off that one tree, I think I've got about 5 or 6 different trees of different sizes. One's a root over rock, and they're just all magnificent. Because once you find one that's got that really lovely flower, that really nice appeal, that colour that it gets, or maybe it's the propensity to flower prolifically, to push out the flowers left, right and centre, then, taking cuttings off these things works really well. So even if you see a tree somewhere else and you get the permission of the owner, of course, please don't take it without permission. But you know what I mean. They propagate really well if you're going to take cuttings off them. And this time of the year for them, I'm seeing the leaf bud come out and the flowers are just starting to stop now. They're sort of blowing away and around the yard. It's really nice. It's really pretty. But it's also time for me to remember the plan with my tree. So and this is where it gets really, really important. That's part of the theme for today when we talk about fertilizing as well, is the plan or the stage of development of your trees that I go on about a bit. But knowing what you want to do before you start pruning is really super important. I can't stress that enough. So we've got this new growth that's coming out now. Some trees, are being pinched straight away. Other trees are going to be allowed to extend and grow out. So it all depends what stage that I want them to be at. So my Prunus that are at that stage where all I want is flowers. Like, I'm happy with the trunk. I'm happy with the structure. I know they're never going to have that really massive, fine, twiggy growth that other deciduous get, which I'm okay with. I've learned to live with that. When I was younger in my bonsai life, I pushed all the time for structure on my Prunus. I wanted that fine twiggy outline, and you have to realise that they're a variety that quite often gets dieback, and so that work that you're putting in with the pruning side of things can be undone quite quickly with one season, where you come out of winter and all of a sudden you go, hang on a minute, that branch is dead, that branch is dead, that one's not doing so well, that's going to die, but all the others are doing okay. So once I've got my trunk and nabari, once I've got my primary branches, the rest of it for me with a Prunus is okay. It's okay. And when I spent some time in Japan and got to see a big show just of flowering Prunus, that's what it was. It was just for that at that time of the year, which was very lucky to get to see it and be involved with that setup and showing them, seeing them in that way where they were really super old trees, hundreds of years old, these things potentially, and you look at some and go, God, that dead timber on that thing has cracked so much, and the bark is so gnarly. Like, these have got to have some serious age to them. Not knowing exactly how old they are, but they're very, very old. And then you look at the structure on them, and primary branches seem to be okay, but from secondary through to tertiary, it's a bit hit and miss around the place. And when you get in close and have a look at their trunks and their trees, I could see where they'd just cleaned up some of those branches that had died back throughout the winter period. It's very normal for them when they're in a bonsai pot to not keep, 1 to 2, not keep dividing and ramifying, but to get to a point and go, well, that's enough, that's enough. But the thing with them was that with that really old gnarly bark that they get, or the trunk line that they get, and deadwood incorporate into it as well, and then you see these delicate, beautiful flowers of all different colours and varieties. It's like, oh, that's okay, because that's what makes me smile, seeing those flowers. So when it comes to managing the growth for my Prunus, instead of doing what I used to do, which was as soon as it started to grow out, I'd look at the branch, the leaf pattern on this thing and go, okay, I want the new branch to grow from there, cut straight away. As soon as it starts to extend past the silhouette, prune it back, and then wait and try and hopefully get a second flush of growth and try and keep pushing this thing to ramify as much as I possibly could. What's changed for me now is my approach to this. So I'm talking specifically for me in Melbourne, Australia. So the months that I'm going to talk about apply to me. And depending on where you are anywhere around the world, obviously you need to change this based on your season. So right now we're at the start of September, which is the start of our spring, and we're just getting leaf burst and flowers are just starting to cease. So what I'll do now is I will let that initial growth go until sometime in October, November. All right, so that first flush of growth, I'll let that branch extend out and get, as long as it wants to get, to be honest. I really don't mind. Then I'll come back and I'll cut it back to the second, third leaf, that clip and grow type method where you prune back in the direction of you want the new future branch to grow. So really it's a pre-summer prune for the Prunus. Okay? Stick with me. So then what happens is as we get into that latter part of November, or just prior to the summer period kicking in, there's normally, pretty much always another flush of growth. And it's that next flush of growth that comes along that I find that the Prunus start to set their flower buds. So, and again, this is from my experience. So this may be very different for where you are, and you need to check. So I'm trying to help you with what I do with mine. So I'll prune them once, let them go crazy again. Then I'll let that get to the autumn period when I can see where the flower buds have set on this tree. And then I can start looking at doing a prune back further in the autumn period if I'm worried about silhouette. But I was going to say 100% of the time. It's not 100%, maybe 99% of the time. I'll just do that one cut for my Prunus and I'll let the second flush grow, because what that means for me is that I've potentially got a really long lot of branches on this tree. So the tree looks a bit shaggy, a bit disheveled, a bit ugly. That's okay. Go to the back of the queue, go to a bench where I'm not going to be looking at you every day. But then when spring comes, or just prior to spring, and all those flowers come out, all those long branches that have pushed out, hopefully are covered in flowers. So they just get these absolute massive flowers. Then what can happen is as I get the leaf burst on these trees, just prior to letting everything open up, I can come in and do a cut. Like, so right now, I can do a cut on my trees to improve the silhouette. Then I get that spring flush of growth. I let that kick out till mid-October, early November, something around then. Then I come in and cut them back based on the direction I want the new branch to grow, which is really quite a small cutback, second or third leaf thereabouts. Then I'll let that second flush of growth that comes early summer, let's say, I'll let it stay. I won't prune that back. That's hopefully where I'm going to get the flower buds to set for the following year. So then I can enjoy what I love most about those trees. And then instead of being on the back of the bench where they're hidden away, they come to the front because they take number one priority at that time of the year. Once I've finished my winter work on my pines and I'm done with that, and then I get into the repotting side of things, and it's busy, and all you're looking at is dirt and filth, and it's messy. Then all of a sudden you walk out in the yard and you see these beautiful flowers. It's like, oh, you're a godsend. you make all these aches and pains that I've got around my body and in my hands and on my arms so worth it, because that flower show they do for me every year, and you know, accepting dieback as a natural part of life with the Prunus, it's okay. Don't you've got to maintain and look out for any issues with the trees and fungal issues and stuff like that. But I've learned to accept now that they are what they are. You know, I don't want them to be a maple, because they're so much better when they're at their peak, when they're doing exactly what I want them to do, which is putting out these spring flowers. They beat anything in my yard, hands down, and I don't think I'd have a collection without keeping a few of them in there of all different varieties. You know, there's ornamental varieties you can get. There's fruiting varieties. You know, there's nectarines. There's so many different ones, and all the flowers on them are completely different. But the habit and the way that I treat that variety, that the Prunus family, it's all pretty consistent, and so far so good. Like, I'm really happy. Every year I've managed to get flowers on these things, just with this approach to grow, cut, grow, leave. That's it. It's as simple as that. So hopefully that helps you with your Prunus in your collection too. Love spring. I really love it. And you know what I love about the start of spring? Taking bonsai out of the question for the moment, when I go surfing, there's still decent swell around, but the sun shines, and it's nice. It's a magnificent change. But also, from your bonsai's perspective, which is what you're here for, is it's a time where we need to be on top of the feeding of your trees and the fertilising. And I say this every year, and I like this podcast. I might repeat some things that have been said over the last 6 years. I'm certain that I have, but I try and make it topical, that it's a reminder to say, hey, look, you know, we're here. It's early September. It's the start of spring. You've got to get on to feeding your trees. And likewise, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere and you're going into fall, autumn, then it's a good reminder to say you need to be fertilising your trees. It's one of the most important things I think that I do with my trees is the fertilising regime. And I've had to start a little bit earlier this year because of bonsai travel and looking forward and planning for it. But I'd rather start a bit on the earlier side than be too late for it. And that's, I suppose, a really, really important thing for everyone, you know, all you that are listening to the podcast, to you specifically, is to make sure that you take your focus to be on the bonsai, not on you. It's really easy to look at the world according to me, like, you know, from your own perspective, and get busy with things and be nutted down, and suddenly weeks go by, month goes by, month and a half goes by, and you go, shit, I haven't fertilised my bonsai yet. I really should have done it. When you do it, it's not that hard. It's not that long. For me, you know, 400 odd bags of fertiliser, it's a pain. Like setting everything up and laying it all out in front of me and looking at it going, oh my God, this is going to take forever. But when you get into it, it's not that bad. It's really not that bad. And if you've got a smaller number of trees and you're doing the teabag fertilizing method, or you just pick the easiest possible fertilizing method that you are going to do. Like that sliding scale that I've talked about everything bonsai. For me, the ultimate is these tea bags. If I looked at things and went, you know what, I physically am not going to be able to do these tea bags. What's the next best thing I can do? All right, I can buy, a granule Osmocote fertilizer, and I can get one of my daughters to walk around and sprinkle it on the trees once a month, because it'll take them 20 minutes as opposed to being 4 or 5 hours locked away doing the tea bags. If that's the best you can do, then don't beat yourself up for it, but do it. Do it now. Do it when the trees need you to do it. Don't wait. If you wait, I guarantee you're going to miss the boat, and then the spring period will be gone and you won't have harnessed the resources of spring growth, and your trees won't develop like you want them to. It's great to have a plan, but that plan relies on certain key things happening along the way that relies on you to be involved with. And fertilizing is 100% you. And whether the trees get fed or whether they don't, it's nothing to do with anyone else or a system or a roster. It's purely up to you allocating time in your life to be able to do it. So get onto it. So what I want to talk about in the podcast really was, I'm going to break fertilizing into a number of sections because there's a hell of a lot to it, to be honest. And I try and make it as simple and easy as possible. So I just want to talk in this podcast about fertilizing raw stock. So this is stock that you have in your collection that you're developing. Like, let's go back to the stages of production. We'll do a refresher. So number 1, trunk and nabari. 2, primary branches. 3, secondary branches. 4, ramification. Okay, so really, really simple. 4 stages of production, of development of your trees. So raw stock, we're really talking about trunk growth and developing the nabari on these things. Hopefully by now you've done something with repotting, either this year, last year, whatever, but they're growing and you want growth with these trees in development. To get growth means that you've got to feed them. They've got to get lots of everything they need. It's got to be an ideal situation that these things are kept in. Lots of sunshine, lots of air movement, lots of space for the roots to grow. You want extension of growth, and extension of growth comes from the strength and vigor of the tree. So if you go back to repotting frequency around the development stages, repotting frequency for a tree in development, raw stock, is a lot more frequent than a tree that's in stage 4, which is ramification. Because as you're repotting, you're reinvigorating the tree, you're providing the tree with the opportunity to grow plenty of new roots. And with plenty of new roots comes plenty of new growth. So to feed and encourage and push and provide nitrogen in there, we're not worrying about leaf size, we're not worrying about branch thickness, not worrying about coarseness of structure. All we're worrying about is trunk and nabari. So to get that, we've got to get extension, which means that, let's talk about tea bags because it's my preferred method. And if an advanced tree, for instance, in stage 4 of production is getting 0 to 1 bag of fertilizer at this time of year, then a tree that's raw stock, that's at that stage 1, trunk and nabari stage of development, then it's probably going to get 4 to 6 right now for this month, because I want to push that thing along as hard as I can. And it's one of the tools that we've got in our arsenal. If we want to stop something getting thicker, if we want to prevent something getting too long, we cut it off. It's easy. But if we want something to get long and we want something to thicken, we have to keep providing what the tree needs to be able to do that. When there's a tree in the ground and it's a young tree and they take off and you see them go nuts, those roots on that tree will be growing like crazy underground, and they'll be getting every single thing that they need from wherever they need it. You put them into a bonsai pot, you put them into a container of any kind, whether it's a grow pot, a grow tub, whatever it is, then you're restricting or you're limiting the availability of resources for that tree to do what you want it to do. So you need to then make allowance for that and provide what it needs, and it comes in the form of fertilizer. And like I said, I've always pushed the ease and repeatability of and consistency and predictability of outcome with everything I do. And the tea bag's the multiplication factor that I have in my head that allows me to go, okay, what stage is it at? It's back at this stage. What do I want to do? I've got a nice nabari developing. The trunk's starting to develop, but it's probably like a sausage. It's the same thickness, all right. I've got to cut that back so I can step taper down to that tree. Right, now I want that branch that's left there on the side that's going to become the new leader, the new apex. I want that to go nuts. How do I get that to go nuts? All right, so I'm not going to cut it, and I'm going to give it lots of sunshine. I'm going to give it lots of water. I'm going to put it in a really nice spot in the yard, and I'm going to feed it heavily. All right, what does feeding heavily mean? I'm going to put 4 bags of fertilizer on there per month during the growing season of spring. So I'm really going to kick this thing along as hard as I possibly can. And that's what you've got to do. So with the raw stock, with part 1 of our fertilizing segment on the podcast, if you've got something that's in development, check your plan for it. Make sure that it's in a really good spot, and make sure that you've got the fertilizer up to it early and consistently. Those tea bags last, give or take 3 to 5 weeks. So let's call it a month for sake of ease, right? So every month I know that any tree that I've got in development, I've got to make sure that I'm putting extra tea bags on there. And if if it's only a little whip in a pot, then maybe 1 tea bag's going to be plenty. But if it's in a big tree in a big pot, then maybe 6 tea bags is going to be right. Maybe 8 tea bags is going to be right. Whatever it is, you've got to factor it in that you're giving it excess. When we're trying to thicken, when we're trying to elongate, when we're trying to grow that stage 1 of our development, the trunk and the nabari, we've got to really make sure we're pushing it, and that's on you. You can't leave it for someone else. You can't cross your fingers and say, geez, I hope this grows crazy because I'm busy doing whatever, and I'm just going to tuck it over in that back corner there. That's not how this is going to get to the next stage of development in a short period. If you want rapid growth, you want acceleration, you're impatient with how you want to develop it, then you've got to make sure it's the perfect storm for that tree to grow into. So it's on you now. Righto, we're going to try with the podcast now. I think they've been getting a little bit too long. I find it amazing myself, someone who was always shy, someone who didn't like talking, who was very insecure and maybe not as confident about things, where I am now, where I feel like I've got a really a nice solid understanding of bonsai and a love for them. It's a passion that allows you to get over all these things. I find that now it's hard to shut myself up. So the podcasts have been getting a little bit longer and pushing on. So I'm going to try a different format now. I'm going to try and keep them so they're a bit shorter, a bit sharper, and a bit more succinct, so that they can have more of an impact, I think, than the longer ones. So I hope you enjoyed it. And next week we'll be going on and we'll be talking about developing further with our fertilizer regime as well, and talk a bit more about pruning around the yard and stuff like that, because it's topical. It's a perfect thing to be involved with, and hopefully you've got your plans all in place and your mindset is ready for this spring period, and that just understanding that it's something that if we harness it, if you can really take a hold of it now, your trees, I guarantee you, when it gets to that summer period in a very short period of time, in 3 months' time, you'll be amazed how well they develop if you do the right things now and make it easy for yourself. That's why I love these tea bags, because they're readily available. You get them from the $2 Japanese shop. You fill them up once and you've got a month worth of fertilizing done. So it's a little bit of work to get them there, but when you do them, they're so much easier. It's a godsend for how we look after our trees. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking around. I love it too when I flick through social media and stuff these days, and I see comments from different places all around the world. This happy bonsai thing is it's awesome. It's everywhere. So this is good. This is really good. It makes me smile to the grinning like a silly cat at the moment, because I love it when the good word of bonsai spreads around and we're all in a better place for it. So thanks for listening in. Until next time, happy bonsai.